These final chapters of the book of Judges conclude the two accounts that demonstrate the evil that the children of Israel engaged in when they departed from the Lord. These two accounts are marked by the repeated statement that in those days there was no king in Israel. The last account about the abuse and death of the concubine of a traveling Levite led to a civil war between the tribe of Benjamin and the rest of Israel. This civil war is the subject of the last two chapters in the book. The account of the war takes us back to the beginning of the book of Judges, which opened with a review of how the children of Israel made war against the Canaanites to drive them out of the promised land. What are the similarities between the opening of the book and its conclusion? What are the similarities between the war against the Canaanites and the war against Benjamin? How does this apply to both us and Israel today? I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is the Promise of Rest. The abuse and death of the Levite's concubine happened at the hands of the inhabitants of Gibeah. The inhabitants had first denied guest right to the Levite. Then, when a man from Ephraim took the Levite into his home, they demanded that the Levite be turned over to them so they could sexually abuse him. Finally, when the concubine is turned over to the inhabitants of Gibeah in place of the Levite, the concubine dies as a result of the abuse she suffered. The Levite responded by sending her body throughout Israel, demanding that all the tribes of Israel act against Gibeah. In response, the children of Israel all gathered together before the Lord at Mizpah to discuss what actions they should take against Gibeah. Judges 20:1 and 2. So all the children of Israel came out, from Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gilead, and the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. This was not a small gathering of just a few people. This was a gathering of all the armed men of Israel, similar to the gathering of the people at Shiloh when Joshua and Eleazar apportioned the land by lot in Joshua 18:1 and 2. However, the gathering to decide the fate of Gibeah was not at Shiloh. It was at Mizpah. According to Joshua 18:26, Mizpah was a city in the tribal lands of Benjamin, a short distance from Shiloh. It was on the border with Ephraim, about 4 miles northwest of Jerusalem, on a hill above the plains of Gibeon, and about 8 miles from Gibeah. When all the men were assembled, the Levite told his story about what happened in Gibeah and asked for their counsel and advice. Judges 20:6 and 7. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now. The leaders of the tribes decided to go up against Gibeah. They would go up against it by lot. Judges 20:8 and 9. And all the people rise as one man, saying, None of us doth go to his tent, and none of us doth turn aside to his house. And now this is the thing which we do to Gibeah, against it by lot. What did they mean when they said they would go against Gibeah by lot? The verses following this one describe how a tenth of the army gathered there at Mizpah would go out and seek provisions for the campaign, but this doesn't seem like it is a means of going against Gibeah. The commentators Keel and Delitzsch explain the Hebraism in the expression. The words against it by lot contain the resolution that was formed concerning the sinful town, and have all the enigmatical brevity of judicial sentences, and are to be explained from the course laid down in the Mosaic law with regard to the Canaanites, who were to be exterminated, and their land divided by lot among the Israelites. Consequently, the meaning is simply this: let us proceed with the lot against Gibeah, i.e., let us deal with it as with the towns of the Canaanites, conquer it, lay it in ashes, and distribute its territory by lot. This declaration takes us back to the beginning of the book of Judges, which describes how the children of Israel began to take the land that had been apportioned to them by lot. Moses relayed God's instructions that this included the total destruction of the Canaanite cities. Deuteronomy 20:16 and 18. But of the cities of these peoples, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, lest they teach you to do according to all their abominations, which they have done for their gods, and you sin against the Lord your God. The men of Israel seem to have the same plan of destruction for the city of Gibeah. The men of Israel were united with one purpose, to destroy Gibeah to prevent their sin from infecting the rest of Israel. Judges 20:11. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. The phrase united together is composed of two Hebrew words. The first is kabar, number 2270 in Strong's Concordance, meaning an associate or companion who are knit together. The second word is echad, number 259, meaning united as one. The men of Israel were knit together, united as one in their purpose. This quality seemed to be lacking through much of the book of Judges. Various tribes had acted together to defeat the enemies of Israel throughout the period of the Judges, but we don't see all the tribes coming together as they did here. The men of Israel, who were gathered together on the border of the tribal lands of Benjamin, demanded that the men of Benjamin turn over the men of Gibeah for judgment and punishment, so their wickedness would be removed from Israel. Judges 20:12 and 13. Then the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Now, therefore, deliver up the men, the perverted men who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel." But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. The tribes of Benjamin refused this demand. We are not given the reason for their refusal, but the Art Scroll commentary on Judges indicates that it was a matter of pride. No one defended what Gibeon had done, but the people of Benjamin felt that it was solely their responsibility to deal with the perpetrators, and that the other tribes had no right to intervene in an internal affair. Whatever their reason was, their refusal to listen or even respond that they would take care of the problem themselves led to war between Benjamin and the rest of Israel. The men of Israel left Mizpah and went to Bethel to inquire of the Lord. Judges 20:18. Now the sons of Israel arose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God and said, "Who shall go up first for us to battle against the sons of Benjamin?" Then the Lord said, "Judah shall go up first." Why go to Bethel when the tabernacle was in Shiloh? Probably because Bethel was where the men of Israel launched the war against Benjamin, and the ark was brought there to lead the way. Keel and Delitzsch comment, "They went to Bethel, not to Shiloh, where the tabernacle was standing, because that place was too far from the seat of war. The ark of the covenant was therefore brought to Bethel, and Phinehas, the high priest, inquired of the Lord before it through the Urim and Thummim." Judges 20:27 and Judges 20:28. Bethel was on the northern boundary of the tribe of Benjamin and was consecrated to this purpose before any other place by the revelations of God which had been made to the patriarch Jacob there. As for bringing the Ark of the Covenant to lead the way, there was precedent for that when the children of Israel took vengeance on the Midianites for luring them into idolatry on the plains of Moab. In Numbers 31:6, God instructed Moses to send 1,000 men from each tribe to go against the Midianites. The priest Phinehas led the way with the Ark of the Covenant. At the time of the war against the Benjamites, Phinehas was the high priest. Judah was selected to lead in the battle against Benjamin, just like Judah was selected to be the first to go up against the Canaanites in Judges 1:1 and 2. In the war against Benjamin, the men of Israel brought 400,000 men, and the tribe of Benjamin had 26,700 men. Judges 20:15 through 17. And the sons of Benjamin were numbered on that day out of the cities 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered 700 chosen men. Among all this people were 700 chosen men left-handed. Every one could sling stones at a hair's breadth and not miss. And the men of Israel besides Benjamin were numbered 400,000 men who drew sword. All these were men of war. The odds were definitely in favor of the men of Israel. The men of Israel camped outside of Gibeah and went to battle against the city and the armies of Benjamin. At the end of the battle fought on the first day, Benjamin soundly defeated the men of Israel, killing 22,000 men. Benjamin's casualties were seemingly insignificant because no number is given for how many were killed. The men of Israel were discouraged and again inquired of the Lord. Judges 20:23. Then the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, Shall I again draw near for battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, Go up against him. Surely the Lord would bring victory this time. He told the men of Israel to go up against Benjamin again. However, once again, Benjamin soundly defeated the army of Israel, this time killing 18,000 men, with no number given for any casualties suffered by Benjamin. Now the men of Israel are really discouraged. They and all the children of Israel went to Bethel to fast and weep before the Lord. Judges 20:26. Then all the sons of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel and wept. Thus they remained there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. God's answer to them this time was slightly different than it was before. He told them that he would deliver Benjamin into their hands. Judges 20:27 and 28. So the children of Israel inquired of the Lord. The ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Phinehas the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. So what was different in their inquiry this time, that God said he would give them victory? This takes us to another parallel with the beginning of the book of Judges. After the death of Joshua, Judges 2:15 says that the children of Israel forsook the Lord and followed after the Baals, so God delivered them into the hands of the Canaanites. This implied that Israel's defeat by Benjamin was because of some sin in the camp. Keel and Delitzsch comment on the sin of Israel. The congregation now discovered from this repeated defeat that the Lord had withdrawn his grace and was punishing them. Their sin, however, did not consist in the fact that they had begun the war itself, for the law in Deuteronomy 22:22, to which they themselves had referred to in Judges 20:13, really required this, but rather in the state of mind with which they had entered upon the war, their strong self-consciousness and great confidence in their own might and power. They had indeed inquired of God, Elohim, who should open the conflict, but they had neglected to humble themselves before Jehovah, the covenant God, in their consciousness not only of their own weakness and sinfulness, but also of grief at the moral corruption of their brother tribe. When the men of Israel went to God the first time, they merely asked which tribe should go first. They were confident in their own strength to win the battle. The third time they fasted and wept before the Lord, and God gave them the victory. 25,100 men of Benjamin were killed in the battle that day. Judges 20:35. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed that day 25,100 Benjamites. All these drew the sword. The verses that follow give the details of how the battle unfolded. In the end, only 600 Benjamites survived. The battle accounts for all but 1,100 of the Benjamites. We can only surmise that this was the number killed in the first 2 days of the battle. The men of Israel didn't stop with defeating the fighting men. They burned Gibeah and all its inhabitants. Then they went throughout the tribal lands of Benjamin and burned all the cities and killed all the inhabitants. The 600 surviving men took refuge in the rocks at Rimmon. Judges 20:47. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they stayed at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. The detail that 600 men of Benjamin remained matched the number of Danites that went to Laish. The 1,100 men who were probably killed in the first 2 battles is the same as the amount of silver that Micah stole from his mother. These little details add to the connections between the last 2 accounts in the book of Judges. The 600 Danites went to Laish to establish a safe place for their families. In contrast, the 600 Benjamites no longer had families. The rest of the entire tribe of Benjamin was wiped out. How would the tribe survive? Judges 21:1-3. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, "None of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin in marriage." So the people came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening, and lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. They said, "Why, O Lord, God of Israel, has this come about in Israel, so that one tribe should be missing today in Israel?" So the men of Israel devised a clever strategy to provide wives for the Benjamites. We learn that while at Mizpah, the men of Israel had made an oath that any city who did not join in the assembly at Mizpah to decide the fate of Gibeah would be put to death. One of the cities of Israel, Jabesh-Gilead, had not sent a representative to the gathering at Mizpah. Judges 21:8. And they said, "What one is there from the tribes of Israel who did not come up to Mizpah to the Lord?" And in fact, no one had come to the camp from Jabesh-Gilead to the assembly. The assembly of Israel sent out 12,000 men to destroy the city of Jabesh-Gilead and take any women who were virgins to be given to the men of Benjamin as wives. This action against Jabesh-Gilead is similar to what Gideon did to the towns of Succoth and Penuel, who had refused to provision them when he was pursuing the Midianites in Judges chapter 8. After the looting of Jabesh-Gilead, the congregation reached out to extend peace to the men of Benjamin and give them the 400 virgins they had captured. Judges 21:13-14. Then the whole congregation sent word to the children of Benjamin who were at the rock of Rimmon and announced peace to them. So Benjamin came back at that time, and they gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the women of Jabesh-Gilead, and yet they had not found enough for them. To provide the other 200 brides, Israel allowed Benjamin to capture virgins at a feast of the Lord at Shiloh. Judges 21:20-21. Therefore they instructed the children of Benjamin, saying, "Go, lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch, and just when the daughters of Shiloh come out to perform their dances, then come out from the vineyards, and every man catch a wife for himself from the daughters of Shiloh, then go to the land of Benjamin." The dancing was probably at the Feast of Unleavened Bread in honor of Miriam leading the other women in dancing when God brought the children of Israel safely across the Red Sea. With the last of the men of Benjamin receiving wives, the tribal future for Benjamin was restored, and the congregation was able to return to their own lands. Judges 21:24-25. So the children of Israel departed from there at that time. Every man went to his tribe and family. They went out from there, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. The book of Judges opened with initial success in taking the promised land, followed by defeat because of their sins. The book ends with the town of Benjamin participating in the sins of the Canaanites to the point of denying hospitality to a fellow Israelite and murdering his concubine. When the children of Israel fought against the city and the tribe of Benjamin, they were met with initial failure because of their own unrepentant hearts. Only when they repented and truly mourned the evil that was done in Gibeah did God give them the victory. Punishment was visited on Benjamin, but not to the extent of totally wiping out the tribe. This is what the prophet Isaiah said would happen to Israel at the hands of the Assyrians many years later. Isaiah 1:9. Unless the Lord of hosts had left to us a very small remnant, we would have become like Sodom. We would have been made like Gomorrah. This also applies to the nation of Israel today. If they seek to totally destroy their enemies, they need to humble themselves, rely on God's victory, not their own strength, and truly mourn the sins committed within the borders of the nation. As for us, if we want to be truly victorious, we need to mourn for the sins we have committed and rely on God's strength to bring us victory in our lives. As we move into the book of Ruth, which is also set in the time of the Judges, we will see an example of how the righteous acts of one man restores a family of Israel. I'm Brenda Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.